Do you want to make your garden look lovely, but you're just not sure how to start? What are the easiest things to grow? I'm going to show you 10 of the simplest things you can do to make your garden look great this summer. Welcome to the STIHL Garden Guide. My name is Jane Moore and I'm a professional gardener. But today I'm welcoming you into my friend's garden to give you some hints, tips and ideas on how to get your garden looking blooming marvellous this summer. Get started by taking a good long look at your garden. Perhaps you've got a few trees and maybe a flower bed or two that you really like, and that's a really good place to start. If you don't have much to start with, then start with a quick sketch and maybe pick out a few spots for a flower border or perhaps a vegetable bed. The crucial thing is don't get too carried away. Start off gently and build it up. Remember, you're going to have to water and weed it all the way through the summer months. One of the things you really do need to know about your garden is which parts are sunny and which bits are shady. Most vegetables and an awful lot of flowers really need sunshine to thrive, but there are quite a lot that will cope with some sun and some shade, and there are some that will cope with almost all shade. Talk to the staff at your local garden centre. They'll give you lots of helpful advice. And when you're buying a plant, read the label too. If you're lucky, you'll have a good garden centre, like this one, Henry Street Garden Centre, nearby to you, where you can get lots of advice. But labels will give you tons of info too. Hardiness or growing zone in the States, which will tell you how winter tolerant the plant is. This is so important, as some plants will just die off in the winter when it gets frosty. Lots of vegetables are like this, and annual flowers too. There's also flowering time, how much sun or shade they need, when to prune them, and what sort of soil they need, so you'll know whether they're going to suit your garden. Starting a new bed is simple, but it is hard work. But it's one of those things that the more effort you put in, the happier your plants will be. So it's well worth getting it right. Take off the top layer of the turf. It's easy enough with a spade. Then you can put that in the compost heap to rot down. After that, you just dig over the area and take out any of the weeds and roots that you might find. It's well worth adding in a bit of garden compost, or if you haven't got that, then just get some soil conditioner or some well-rotted manure, which you can just buy in bags from the garden centre. This will really add quite a lot of substance to your new bed. You only need to dig over a spade or a fork's depth and crumble up the soil a little bit. If it's really sticky and claggy, then use a board to work from to stop you undoing all your hard work. There is an even easier way to make a bed, and that is simply by spreading newspaper or cardboard across the ground. You don't even need to take the turf off, although I have. And then you just top that with a whole load of compost or manure or whatever you've got really, and wait. It'll take a long time, even longer if you haven't taken the turf off, but it's a lot easier than digging. Oh, these look good. There are hundreds of plants to choose from catalogues, nurseries and garden centres too. Starting off at the garden centre is a good idea, so you can get some advice and tips on what to grow and where to plant them, but also you can have a really good look at the plants. Picking a good plant is easy when you know what to look for. It needs to be bushy and lush looking. The leaves should be firm to touch and not crispy like it's drying out. And the compost, get your finger in there and feel it. The compost should be slightly moist and the plant should be filling the pot. If in doubt, you can carefully upend the plant and remove it from its pot. Make sure that the roots are really nicely spread. Pick plants that are suitable for your climate, your soil and the sunlight levels in your garden, and you shouldn't really go wrong. Perennials are plants that die back every winter, but grow again in the spring year after year, which makes them really good value and easy to look after. My top 5 super easy perennial plants include things like this. This is Stachys lanata, or lamb's ears, which is really easy to grow and loves all sorts of soils and have these fabulous furry ears all summer long. It also produces flowers a little bit later on in the summer. So that's a good one. Another one, this might not be in flower now, but it will be later. This is a really good late season plant. This is one of the Asters, which are fabulous bee and butterfly plants, so a must have in your perennial border and super easy to grow. Another one that's fantastic for wildlife is this one. This is Nepeta, the catmint. So a bit of a problem if you've got cats because they absolutely love it and will lie on it and eat it and all sorts of things, but also fabulous for bees and butterflies. They just love these really nectar-rich blue flowers, and these blue flowers will just keep on flowering pretty much all summer long. You can even cut it back and get a second flush of flowers. Talking about long flowering season, this is one of my absolute desert island plants. This is Geranium Roseanne, which is such a super long flowerer. It's quite often flowering in my garden right into November, so it just keeps on going forever. It's not started yet, but give it a month and it will be flowering. So that's kind of June to November that you're going to get from that. And then my last pick of the day is this one, which I just love, and all garden designers adore this plant. This is Verbena bonariensis, or the bony verbena as I tend to think of it. This is that plant that gets really tall stems with the flowers just on the top of it, and it has this lovely sort of see-through wavy movement as well. Really long flowering, really easy to grow. Once you've got it, you'll end up with seeds coming out of your compost heap and all sorts of things. It will seed itself around your garden. Not necessarily where you want it, but prolifically. Planting a plant isn't difficult, but they do require a bit of care and finesse. They are living things after all. Start with reading the label to make sure you know exactly what the conditions are that the plant needs. And think about the position of the plant. Will it get enough sun? Is it tall and does it need plenty of room to spread out? That's especially important when it comes to trees and shrubs, as you really don't want to have to move them. And you might not be able to once they get big and really established too. Dig your hole, not too big, but deep enough to make sure that the crown of the plant is at the right level. Unpot the plant and tease out any roots that might be going around and around gently. Just tease them out a little bit using your fingers before you plant, just to give them a little bit of a head start. Pop the plant in the ground and fill in the soil, firming it in gently as you go. Once you've done that, it's just a matter of giving it a good water to settle those roots in. What you really need to do is make sure that those roots and the soil are bound together, and watering does that brilliantly. Anything that you plant is so reliant on you for looking after it like a mother hen, especially when it comes to watering. For long-term plantings like trees and shrubs, that means that you need to keep an eye on them in hot spells for the next 2 or even 3 years. Trees you can water with a couple of cans once or twice every week, or with a hose dribbling for an hour or 2 at night. It's a really good way to do it. It's always best to water in the evening or even at night on a timer switch, as plants sweat a bit during the day, losing water from their leaves trying to keep cool. If you water at night when it's cooler, it tends to keep the water where you want it, by the roots. Some of the easiest plants you can get started with are annuals, like bedding plants. You can buy young plants of flowers like Compost and geraniums at the garden centre. And there's lots to choose from of all sorts of fantastic flowers. Things like these lovely osteospermums, which are so easy to grow and just absolutely adore being in the sunshine. They look great in a pot and will combine really well with things like this lovely Nemesia. Nemesia is a really good wildlife plant, but it also just keeps on flowering, which is probably one of the reasons why the wildlife love it so much. Some of my other favourites are things like this. This is Bacopa, a lovely little snowflake flower of a plant. But these little flowers, they might be small, but they keep on coming, and plants will absolutely love them. Some of my favourites are so easy to grow from seed, either planted in pots or straight into the ground, some of them. Things like calendulas, violas and sunflowers are easy to sow and grow in pots. And a few seeds doesn't cost very much, so go on, have a go. For annuals like these that only last a season, you need to look after them, which means watering a couple of times a week or even more on hot, dry spells. And if your plants are in pots, you might need to water them every day. Things like tomatoes are really thirsty, especially when the start of the flowering season and the fruit is swelling. Remember that plants don't like going from bone dry to flooded. Compost is really difficult to re-wet once it's dried out completely. Some easy to grow vegetables include things like radishes, courgettes, tomatoes, beetroot, leafy chard, lettuces and salad leaves. These are all brilliant starter vegetables, as long as you like to eat them, of course. Some of them you can grow straight into the bed wherever you want them to grow. Chard, beetroot and salad leaves can all be grown like that, and you can grow them in the one spot until you harvest them. And some of them are cut and come again, so you get multiple harvests. But sometimes it's easier to start things off in pots and containers so that you can keep an eye on them for watering and to keep them away from pests like slugs and snails. Things like courgettes and tomatoes, you definitely want to start in pots. And be careful how many seeds you sow. You don't want hundreds or even tens of tomatoes and courgette plants unless you're planning a plant sale. Sowing seeds is straightforward. The principles are the same whether it's vegetables or flowers. Read the packet for instructions on how and where to grow and sow. And again, think about how many plants you want to have. Some packets contain hundreds of seeds, and you probably don't want 500 viola plants. Others don't, and you might want all 12 of the sunflower plants. Not every seed that you sow will germinate, but most will. Prepare your seed tray, pot or container for sowing by filling it with compost and then firming it lightly, or the seed tray. And for big seeds like sunflowers and courgettes, you're only going to want a couple of seeds per pot. For smaller seeds, you might want to have a few more than that. Some of the seeds are like dust, like viola seeds, and even things like chard and things. They're not very big seeds, so you might want to sow quite a few in each cell or in a tray. And once you've got them all planted, then give them a light water in and place them either on a windowsill or perhaps in a propagator to just get them going. Sowing seeds directly into the ground is actually super easy, but they are more prone to weather and pests and all that sort of thing. So taking a bit of time to get the soil just right is absolutely crucial. What you want to do after you've dug over your bed is just get your soil to what is called a fine tilth. Now this is how you get a fine tilth. You break up any of the lumps and get out any of the stones and really get it into what is called a lovely seed bed. Once you've done that, just rake it over really lightly, and you can see that that is becoming like a really fine breadcrumb almost, and that is what you're going to sow into. I just use the back of the rake to get a nice groove out for the seeds, and how deep you sow your seeds depends on the size of them. I'm just sowing a few radish seeds today, and they're reasonably big seeds, so I need a reasonably deep groove. Other seeds are almost like dust and they hardly need any groove at all. And because it's a little bit dry, I'm going to water the groove as well before I plant, just to make sure that they've really got something good to go into. There's the radish seeds, and I'm just going to put them in. On the back of the label, or the back of the packet, it will tell you how far apart to plant your seeds. I tend to plant radishes in little groups because then they come up in a little cluster of lovely little baby roots. And once you've finished sowing, all you need to do is just rake over that little groove, cover it over really nicely, pat it into place, and perhaps give it another water if it's all a bit dry. Growing flowers and vegetables in pots is easy and very successful. Potted plants are easy to keep an eye on, and they're generally safer from pests, but they do rely on you totally for all their water and nutrients. Don't underestimate just how much water a pot plant will need, especially a fast grower like a tomato plant. You'll need a decent sized pot to grow anything throughout the summer. Minimum size, I would say, is about 45 centimetres. That's 18 inches wide and deep. Minimum. You can grow in plastic pots or in terracotta or in these lovely glazed pots. The good thing about a plastic pot is it does retain the moisture, so it means a little bit less watering for you. The problem with these terracotta pots, which I love, this classic terracotta, but they do actually leach water out of this porous surface. And that's where a glazed pot like this is just that little bit better. When it comes to compost, you want to use a good, rich compost, ideally incorporating some of your own organic matter, like your garden compost. And make sure you keep pots well watered when it's dry. You can use an automatic watering system with a timer if you like. That's a really good idea. Great plants to grow in pots are annual flowers like cosmos, geraniums, marigolds and violas. And as for vegetables, really the sky's the limit. You can grow beetroot, chard, lettuces in smaller pots or even troughs, even deep window boxes. Or you can try things like tomatoes and perhaps a chili pepper in bigger pots. I really hope you enjoyed these hints, tips and ideas. So for even more, subscribe to the STIHL GB YouTube channel. See you next time.